Hello everybody all at once, this is Theo Cedar-Jones, and I'd like to offer this video blog as a celebration of upcoming 7/23, or Prior Unity Day, July 23rd, 2020, and this is going to be about my mission to save the world. And ever since I was about 18 years old, I became aware of the problem of nuclear weapons. And I'll get into that in a moment. That was my launching point. But as an adult, my three primary goals in life became to become enlightened, to be a rock star, and to save the world. So I had those three primary goals. I still have those three primary goals. And in a way, I wanted to give a bit of an update and a report on what degree of success I may have had in achieving these three goals. But specifically the saving the world goal. I actually feel satisfied that I achieved the enlightenment goal, as I've stated in some of my other videos, around April 2013. And the rockstar thing is a source of endless frustration, and what Gregory Hallett described as shock treatment of humility. That basically I've been forced into a humble position in the rock industry and been blacklisted and up till now. And we've got answers and workarounds for that issue, but primarily in this video I want to talk about, like, to what degree have I actually achieved this result of helping to save the world. And this is so germane to me right now. Hold that thought. Kombucha. Because of the incredibly historic time that we're in, with the possibility of NESARA, GSARA, a global financial reset, and coming out of COVID with essentially the makings of a new Earth civilization in process. I mean, I could go on and on and on about the many extraordinary signs of the times right now that indicate that all of my dreams and hopes of saving planet Earth from nuclear destruction, and then helping to usher in a new Earth civilization that would be successful, that would be positive in some way. I had basic faith in these notions, and I've always applied myself to achieving them. And I think it's kind of remarkable that I have been pursuing such seemingly impossible goals since I was an adult. And to go back to the seeds and germs of how I became convicted of my mission to help save Earth was the book Fate of Earth by Jonathan Schell, where that's where I learned about our nuclear arsenal, Russia's nuclear arsenal, how many nuclear weapons there are, and the exact effects that nuclear weapons have on life, and what would happen to the human race if even a small fraction of the nuclear weapons were ever used. That's what I started studying and learning when I was 18. So I'm going to go down a history now of all the things that I've done to pursue this singular goal of doing whatever is within my power to do whatever is necessary to save the Earth and the human race. And so the book The Fate of the Earth by Jonathan Schell, and then there was one other book that influenced me called The Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawken, and that's where I got the idea of harm reduction. So I started to balance this recognition of the immense harm caused by nuclear weapons with the answer of harm reduction. And also I added to that the philosophy and practice of nonviolence. So nonviolence and harm reduction became, and then cooperative community, those three things, cooperation, harm reduction, and nonviolence, became my weapons of choice. Does that make me a leftist? Does that make me a Democrat? No. So I took a path that was what I call the hippie path, not what became the typical left of labor unions and the Democratic Party and the socialists and communists. All of that was always something I was aware of over to the side when I was going to Cal Berkeley. And there was an element of protest at Berkeley that was associated with the socialists, and I never was affiliated with that. I never liked it, and I didn't believe in it. And I was pursuing my own answer based on cooperative community. And this is a repeating theme in my life about how to approach the question of how to save the world. So roughly around 1981, I had a number of things happen. I turned 18. I fell in love with Janine Watkins. I had my first acid experience. I learned about meditation. I learned about Adida, all within a time frame of 81, 82. And I was age 18, 19 at that time when I was having this golden age of personal awakening, at the same time as being aware of nuclear weapons and Ronald Reagan saying the bombing begins in 5 minutes. And at that time, I was no friend of Ronald Reagan and the conservatives, and felt truly threatened and menaced by him and his negative past as the governor of California, suppressing the rock and roll movements on the Sunset Strip and in the Bay Area, and suppressing free speech and suppressing the hippies. So the conservatives were no friend of my people. The hippies and the rock bands, the free thinkers and the artists, the free spirits and the acid takers. That was the hippie movement that I was trying to be a part of in 1981, 15 years after it was all over. Well, maybe not 15 years. When did the hippie movement die? Somewhere around 68. So 1981 is 13 years after 1968. 13 years after the death of the hippie movement, Theo Cedar Jones is on the scene. 18-year-old, UC Berkeley, Cal Berkeley student, opening up my psyche to the horrors, as I saw it, of Ronald Reagan having his button on the nuclear button. As I saw it, a complete monster. Somebody who would joke that the bombing begins in 5 minutes, and he would send money to death squads in El Salvador and try to justify the most dark, evil, murderous violence in Central America. That guy had his finger on the nuclear trigger, while I was opening up my tender psyche with LSD and meditation to whatever reality reveals. So that's the kind of guts and courage that I had. I was willing to go into the heart of darkness because UC Berkeley was where every nuclear weapon is designed. So I was literally going to college where the Manhattan Project, where Lawrence Livermore Laboratory and Los Alamos Laboratory are all controlled, directed, affiliated with the University of California and Cal Berkeley especially. So I put myself in the belly of the beast under the reign of Ronald Reagan. 1981, I'm taking LSD. 200 times I took psychedelic drugs in my 20s. And we were out for truth. No matter the cost or the consequence, I was willing to die. I was willing to lose my mind and go crazy. I was willing to give it all for the sake of truth. LSD was my weapon. Meditation was my method. And mushrooms kicked my ass. Completely. So, in 1981, this golden age is happening, and I took the vow of nonviolence. I just basically decided I'm never going to use or possess guns. I'm not going to advocate for guns, and I'm going to try to minimize the harm caused by guns and violence. And when I protest, I'm going to use the nonviolent methods used by Martin Luther King and Gandhi. And to me, it was so obviously abundantly clear that if you ever need to protest anything, and if you ever need to organize, that you would use the methodologies of Martin Luther King and Gandhi exclusively, that there was no question that you're going to use violence, that the Black Panthers had tried that. And though they were well within their constitutional rights to bear arms, they were crushed in a contest with a physically superior opponent. So sheer physical violence and your Second Amendment rights were not enough for the Black Panthers to support their cause. And so I learned from that. And I decided that nonviolence was always the way for me. Except when it comes to self-defense of your life or your country. Obviously, there is a time for physical fighting. There's a time for physical killing when it comes to defending children, and when it comes to defending your country, and when it comes to defending yourself. So with that as a baseline, you could pursue so many wonderful options of nonviolence to answer society's problems. And I saw so many opportunities to creatively explore the possibilities of nonviolence. And for me, that took the form of the following activities that I did while I was at Cal Berkeley. One of the first things I did was join the Cooperative Connections food store. There was this little cooperatively owned and operated food store next to the parking garage under Zellerbach Hall. So it was like the worst location on campus. And so we had this seedy little, stinky little cement hole where we sold health food, organic food. And we would have our meetings, and we would decide by consensus as a group what the company would do, how the profits would be spent, how they would be shared. And I did that for several years, and that's where I met my first wife, Shira. And I had very fond recollections of that experience. And that led to working in the Progressive Student Organization at Cal Berkeley. And we would, again, use the consensus process to decide what is our activism going to be. In this case, it was educational. And we would take this film called The Day After, I think it was. It was about the consequences of nuclear war. And we were trying to inform students at Cal Berkeley about just the sheer consequences of nuclear weaponry. That's what we did. So we just went and showed this film to students. That's all we did. That's a Progressive Student Organization. And then I got arrested for civil disobedience at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory in 1983, the summer of '83, and spent 2 years, not 2 years, 2 weeks in a tent city. Actually, I got a 3-week sentence. I did 2 weeks for a good time, and I only spent 10 days in the tent city. But they built a whole tent city to house. There was 1,000 men got arrested. I think 1,000 women were in a whole separate facility. It was the biggest nonviolent civil disobedience, I think, in the history of ever. I don't know of any one single action that was bigger. And it was in that prison jail situation that I learned consensus process at a new level. There were 1,000 men incarcerated in this giant circus tent out at Santa Rita, California, 1983, arrested for blocking the gates at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory in protest of the fact that they designed all the nuclear weapons in the United States. We did a very orderly, very peaceful, a very disciplined blockade, were arrested and put in jail. And that's where Daniel Ellsberg was arrested, and where we all formed 10-member groups that would decide amongst themselves what issues and they want to bring to the table, and then a representative from each 10-member spoke, would go to the center of the wheel, and we'd have these big meetings of all 1,000 men where each representative from each group would go and speak and bring issues to the table. And things were decided in witness of everyone. And this is the consensus process that I have grown up with, that I have done and developed, as you'll see in my little resume here of how I tried to save the world. the consensus process of cooperative community has been a repeating theme in my life of activism and just existing. So here we go. 1985, I decided to, based on my experience of being in Santa Rita and incarcerated for nonviolent civil disobedience, I did social work in San Francisco County Jail in the summer of 1985, or maybe the spring semester, and did that as part of a prison sociology class that I created. But I didn't teach that to anyone. I just presented my findings to a professor. But I wanted to look at society through the lens of jail, prison, because the real politic of jail tells you everything that you need to know about how society really works. But based on that experience, I taught this other class as a senior at Cal called The Importance of Personal Values in Radical Social Change. And that class only had like 5 people other than me in it. And all of the people in that class, except for one, decided to get together and form a cooperative house in Berkeley. And so we did. We got a house together in 1985, and that stayed together till 87. And then my friend Gant asked us to move in with him, and his finances and ours combined bought this house on Ashby Avenue in Berkeley that's been operating to this day since 1987. So that was my foray into cooperative community, my first, and I guess it's been pretty successful. And I've lived most of my adult life in some kind of group housing, cooperative, quasi-cooperative community. And that this was the admonition of Adi Das Samraj. And when I became a formal devotee in 2001, he was always saying, you have to live in cooperative community if you want to be serious. If you want to be serious about enlightenment, if you want to be serious about devotion, you have to live in some kind of cooperative community. And so help me, I made that happen. It's just been immensely difficult. There's a whole other story about like this house that I'm living in now on Lakeshore Avenue in Oakland that I've been in for 20 years that I founded with Bunny Buns. I may have to move out. I don't know how much longer I can live here, but this is, again, a group house for 20 years. So I taught this class. It led to a community house. It's still operating today. And then I had this cataclysmic mushroom trip somewhere around about 1983 with my best friend, my tripping buddy, and my bandmate, Tom. And Tom and I went tripping in Tilden Park, and we took a high-dose heroic mushroom trip. And at some point, we ended up having what was the worst trip we'd ever had. And it was a combination of going mad, losing your mind, having a bad experience, and losing all faculties of life and consciousness, literally losing everything. So I had the experience of losing everything on that trip. And then we had to regain everything. And in the process of regaining everything, I had a God trip where I thought I was God and that I'd always been enlightened. And I played this whole game on myself to pretend that I wasn't enlightened so that I could play this other game of creating these mushrooms where I would convince myself that the mushrooms would help me get enlightened, even though I was already enlightened. And it was this infinite regression cycle of like, I made the game of pretending I'm not enlightened. Because I'm enlightened, pretending I'm not enlightened, I made the mushrooms to get enlightened again. All this complex rigmarole, but ultimately I knew I was God, I knew I was enlightened. And once you've had that experience, even if you think you're crazy later, or if other people think you're crazy, that stuck with me. And I knew that I was on the hook to get back to that state of God. And that informs my mission to save the world. How? Because I had another vision, honestly, while tweaking on methamphetamine and pot once with Bunny Buns. I just had this long rant in the bedroom with her, and I was just saying, more or less, I have the vision, and the vision is that all of the human race and all of planet Earth is going to be enlightened. And I can see it now, and somehow I am going to take some part in that. And she was in tears. It was one of the hardest rants she's ever been through. And but it's all continuous with this idea that saving the world involves the enlightenment of humanity. One causes the other, or they're interwovenly intermingled. So I have become involved in this project or this study or this examination or this creative venture to save the world by becoming enlightened myself and supporting the enlightenment of everybody else. So that's a basic thesis, and that's kind of what I was working with at that point. After that experience with Tom and Tilden Park, after that meth experience of seeing that the whole world was going to be enlightened, which corresponds to what some people are saying today of a great awakening or 5D Earth or a new Earth civilization or a whole ranges of discussing a new age for humanity that's positive. That's no longer constrained by any evil. That's 1,000 years of prosperity and abundance and peace and godliness. And God being in this world, God being the ruler of this world, if not the ruler quite exactly, but the top being that all faithful ones subordinate to. So the order of God is returning to the world in some form or fashion, and that's a good thing. And that's what I fought for my whole life. And that's why, to make this video now, I'm sort of like, God, is it really happening? Is everything I fought for that was so impossible and so outrageous to reach for? And I've been such an extremist, just to be such an idealist and hoping for so many grand things, and then actually working incrementally towards rock and roll, towards the Global Cooperative Forum, towards Warner Williams's art, towards fixing Adidam, like doing these very specific projects that get me closer to the goal of being an enlightened rock star that saves the world. So also, I think I mentioned I'd started meditating in 82, 83. I found Adida and recognized Adida in 1983. And from my very first meditation, I had like a conditional samadhi experience and knew that I was an adept, natural, gifted meditator from many lifetimes and that I was happy. I had this fundamental recognition. I had not transcended the ego thereby. I just knew that I was a meditator from now, from the past, internally. That's what I am. And I'm good at it. That's one of my genius gifts, is meditation. And this is a natural, positive faculty to possess if you're going to be a kind of person who saves the world by helping people be enlightened. So, be a good meditator, save the world by enlightening the world. So does that make sense? Is that like fitting together as a strategy? So that's my strategy at that point, 1983. I'm developing this strategy in that time period. I'm also so fortunate. I'm pulling in all these high-level influences. Like I was studying in the Diamond Heart School in the 80s with my first wife, Shira, and because of that, I was introduced to both the idea of disengaging from the superego as well as feeling your feelings and investigating the wholes and essence, i.e., how the self-contraction manifests in your chakras. And by feeling into the self-contraction of your chakras and through that contraction into whatever reality is revealed as in that state. And Hamid was my teacher and Janelle Ensler, and I was blessed. I was blessed. These teachers got me on my grounding in terms of practice. in terms of self-discipline and in terms of self-responsibility. And Janelle Ensler especially affected me as a teacher, and always has and always will. So I've been very gifted by these teachers who I was faithful to and loved. Then I learned about neuroemotional therapy from Tom Bloink, who healed me and my wife and my bandmates of chronic problems through neuroemotional therapy. So I guess I was getting the best and the brightest of healing, of spiritual growth, of emotional healing and growth. All these things were the best and the brightest, plus the Paralandra, working with nature spirits and the flower essences. I did that, and I'm still doing that. And that's accounted for the fact that, I enjoy unusually good, vibrant health at age 57 is partly due to neuroemotional therapy with Thomas Bloink and using the flower essences of Paralandra, along with working with my quote-unquote MAP team, composed of these 4 entities: the Nature Spirit Pan, the White Brotherhood medical team, my higher self, so-called, which is just Adi Da, and then the nature spirits of your body. Nature spirits. You work in a cooperative community, not only with humans, but with nature spirits. How perfect is that? How lucky am I to get to do all this best and brightest of the West Coast innovative cultures? I sucked them all in. Everything about Jack Kerouac and Gertrude Stein and the Black Panthers and Bruce Lee, all this regional culture from Creedence Clearwater Revival and Green Day, all this music, all this culture, bursting from the East Bay, bursting from the Bay Area, bursting from the West Coast, bursting from California. That is me. That's 4th of July, Stars and Stripes, Theo Cedar Jones, born in New York City, West Coast hippie, bringing this together as some great cultural orchestration of a New Earth civilization. Like, I've got to do it. As an artist, I have to do it. As an artist, I have to take on this agenda of, like, save the world, but do it as an artist would do it. Do it as though the forms and structures of planet Earth and human society are art. They are done as art. They are done for artistic purposes. They are done for artistic outcomes. And if you pursue society as art and culture, and you let society be led as art and culture, not as power and control, then we get more to the balance between male and female, between God and goddess, and we see the emergence of the goddess. We see the emergence of Santosha Tantra as the definitive, incontrovertible demonstration fact of the goddess. How lucky am I? So I'm pulling in all the best and the brightest influences of the West Coast because I want to be in a position where I can deliver a cultural orchestration of human civilization as an artistic construct, as a collaborative artistic construct, like a rock band performing to an audience in ecstatic, rapturous mutuality. And then in 1997, I built Orange Sky Recording Studio because in order for me to fulfill Swaybone and my rock and roll, I had to build a recording studio where I could rehearse my band and not go bankrupt, record my band and not go bankrupt, and learn recording and not go bankrupt. So there's 3 things. You've got to learn recording, and that's $15,000 of education. You've got to do all the other things I said. In other words, it was a hideous, horrifically intense responsibility to Do the 10,000 hours that's required to be a great rock singer. Do the 10,000 hours that's required to be a great guitarist. Do the 10,000 hours required to be a great songwriter. Do the 10,000 hours required to be a great band leader. Do the 10,000 hours required to be a great engineer, musical producer, engineer. And of course, a lot of those things, I'm wearing those hats, all four of them at the same time. So I'm doing my 10,000 hours concurrently in several different fields. There's no way to do that many things, 10,000 hours worth in a human lifetime. But I have done that. And I have the proof and the evidence of it in my Swaybone box set and in all the songs I recorded for other artists at Orange Sky Studio. I manifested that sacred space. I constructed that studio physically and defended it with my life for 18 years. Through hell and high water, I assure you, financially white knuckling for 18 years and then beyond. Financial slavery has been the greatest struggle for me of all the other struggles. So I built that studio and kept it going for 18 years so that I could fulfill my songwriting and rock and roll dream as a creative artist, and I did. And that was my thing that I had to do. My way of spreading the message and the gospel of Adi Da, Santosh Amma, and prior unity and not to his peace, and the Global Cooperative Forum is through rock and roll, through Swaybone now, in the past, and forever in the future. Swaybone, Numinous Fools, is my method, my effect, my everything. Everything I have to offer, other than Warner Williams and the Global Cooperative Forum, it's all woven together into this arts and culture orchestration meant to be an activist, artistic, New Earth civilization. So, in 1997, we had our first music festival called the Dingus Festival in People's Park. I met and began working for Warner Williams in 1997. In 2002, we had our Love Fest Gratitude Festival at the Dandelion Farms, organized by Bunny Buns and myself, where we tried to bring the Adidam community with the so-called The Community, which is again, an amazing high-level experience of these people who formed these so-called gratitude parties that had an intentional focus where they would close the doors at midnight, no one else could get in, and then we do a consciousness circle invocation thing where they'd turn off the music, everyone would share some intention together, and then they'd turn on the music again, and you'd have the best, most ripping, high-level party you've ever had in your life, where that sense of cooperative community and some form of intention is set at a higher level. So those people, the gratitude party people called the community, work together with Adidam people to create the Love Fest Gratitude 2-day party, outdoor party at Dandelion Farm. Again, we're pushing the envelope. We're trying to find a way to break through in rock and roll, through entertainment. Bunny Buns is trying to be an entertainer. We're trying to seize the entertainment industry for the purposes of Adi Da. And we failed. So, I became Adi Da's formal devotee in 2001, and I began serving Adi Da's mission in 2001, and I did consistently do that until 2007, when we had our biggest missionary event in San Francisco called the Art and Revelation of Adi Da, created by me. I made this event happen. It was the biggest and most successful missionary event for Adi Da in the history of Adidam, other than the Bright movie event, which was not, strictly speaking, a missionary event, but what we did was a pure missionary event, and we got 166 people there. So I proved my effectiveness at organizing a successful entertainment event and was summarily kicked out of Adidam's mission and any kind of authority in the church after that. That's a whole other story. Me and Adidam. By the way, I'm a faithful member of Adi Da's church still, Second Congregation devotee, and forever will be, and I plan to help Adidam get out of its mess. So after becoming Adida's devotee, and I began serving his mission and did that event in 2007, I also wrote my first book called The Plan, How to Save the World in 2007. And that book was based on coming up with the top 100 lists, like you have the Billboard Chart 100 in rock music. Well, you have a top 100 list of the world's worst problems. And I tried to create a triaged, prioritized list of the top 100 problems in the world, and then come up with a systematic list of solutions to all those problems based on harm reduction and nonviolence and cooperative community. That was my book. And then at the core of the book was this idea that the number one problem in all the 100 problems is ego, and that ego is the mother of all other problems. If you secure or solve the ego problem, you've solved the root of the world's problems. So that was like the operating thesis of that book. As soon as I released that book, self-published, I only made like a few copies. I was so broke ass, so financially struggling this whole time. I was manifesting at such a high level, all the stuff I'm mentioning in my resume here, on shoestring, on constant scraping and scratching for money. And by God's grace, here I am. Okay. Bear with me. We're 36 minutes in. This is a long one. Right after publishing my first book, Adida releases the book. He released it in 2006, his first edition of Not to His Peace. I didn't get it into my hot little hands until 2007. And when I read Not to His Peace, that is a life-changing thing that crystallized. I was like, Guru, thank you for giving me a political manifesto. Not only are you the perfect guru of enlightenment, but you have the ultimate political manifesto of peace. Oh my God! And I love that book. And that is my number one favorite book in life. And I have devoured it. I've absorbed it. I have munched and crunched it and put it into my song lyrics and enveloped it within dozens of songs that I've written. Many lyrics that haven't been used yet. Much writing and expositoration have been put forth from my response to Not to His Peace. It is a labor of love, and my whole life revolves around that book, other books by Adida, but oh God, I could go on and on. I love that book. So that book was like overawed all my writing instantly, and I was like, okay, beloved, I'll follow your book. But my book is like a support document, to Adida's great work. And so that was really exciting. See, I got like the ultimate keys of the manifesto I was ultimately looking for. There was no doubt in my mind that I found the answer to how to save the world. The Global Cooperative Forum is the answer to how to save the world. And all the good things that are going on with Jassara and Nasara and the Great Awakening and the good things about Trump, all the brave and bold things about the Patriots and all that stuff is great and good. But it's not enough. We still need the Global Cooperative Forum. We still need to get Prior Unity Ideal and Not to His Peace into every heart and every hand. So that is a great mission. That is still the ultimate mission for Theodore Jones, is simply to bring Not to His Peace to everyone through Swaybone. That's it. That is the crystallization, the focal point of everything else that I do, is bring Not to His Peace to everyone through Swaybone, and thereby save Adidam, save the world, save rock and roll. Not only save it, but like reestablish, recreate, regenerate like the entire civilizational infrastructure through an arts and culture economy. So are you picking up what I'm laying down? Is this forming like a meaningful Gestalt. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm working on. This is like my grand project. And I'm still here. I'm still getting away with it. I'm telling you now this whole stuff. Oh my God. So, 2007, we do the missionary event for Adida. 2008, Bunny Buns and I are like on fire. It's like we're going for broke. We've been struggling for years to get her new cooking talk show off the ground. We've been struggling for longer years to get Swaybone off the ground. We've been struggling for years to get Warner Williams off the ground. We've been struggling for years to get Adida off the ground. We seem to be the supporters of the worst lost causes in the world. Us, little munchkin, little furry puff puffs. Me and Bunny Buns were the cutest power couple for a while there. So, Bunny Buns and I get the chutzpah together. She wants to get married. I say, well, if you're going to get married to me, it's got to be a freaky, not to his piece prior unity wedding. And she says, okay. And we do the most beautiful prior unity wedding on 7/23. That's why I'm doing this talk for about 7/23, prior unity day, July 23rd, 2008. Bunny Buns and Theo get married. A prior unity wedding. It's the first public event in human history based on prior unity and dedicated to Not to His Peace. That's us. That's what we did. And then right after that, we built the Prior Unity Temple at Burning Man. And you can see pictures of that at globalcooperative2013.weebly.com. But we built the first pure, imageless, iconless, pristine white dome of prior unity that has ever existed. We did that. So, we got away with that. We handed out the book Not to His Peace at Burning Man, but nothing came of it, so it seemed. We were hitting our heads against a brick wall. We were failing. We were futile. Bunny Buns was burning out. She's getting depressed. I'm blazing. I'm going to get Adida to be a famous rock star through his art, because his art got me to be his devotee, and I knew his art could get other people to be his devotee, and I knew his art could work as a missionary function, and I loved it. I would serve it forever. I will serve it forever. But it all came to a screeching halt because Adida motherfucking died. November 27th, Thanksgiving Day, 2008, we get the phone call. And we go on a 3-day vigil to try to make him come back because he died so many times. It's like, oh, Adida's died all these other times. He'll come back. Until he's not coming back. So that was the worst day of my life. And the worst experience of my life. How do you recover from that? But that's what I motherfucking did. I can't believe it thinking about it. I was so shattered, I was willing to tear the flesh off of my bones. But instead, I regrouped, got Swaybone back together in 2009 with Rich Donegan and Sergei, and recorded the song Da Light, Lo de Mancour, I Love You, and fulfilled my songwriting formula for the first time, consistently. And as of 2009, I knew I could do songwriting. And I was on a tear, writing songs, recording songs, keeping my band together, getting new bandmates, releasing albums. We released 6 albums from 95 to the present, 170 songs and jams. I did that. Even after the death of my guru, I gave my dedication album, Bones You Can Trust, at his feet. I gave my album, Sacred Anatomy, at his feet. I gave my album, Life on Earth, at his feet. I gave my album, Dissolver, at his feet. All these were rock and roll albums dedicated to Adi Das Samaraj. All these albums dedicated to an expression of my own personal sadhana, my practice in life with him. I stay true to my message, to Adi Da, the entire time. And went on this, back on the hideous grind of trying to make Swaybone successful and playing in small club shows where we can't get even 2 or 3 people to come see us. We struggle to get a single person to come to our shows. I'm serious. For years, dozens of years, literally. I've struggled at the bottom of the music industry in hell. In a hell of frustration and despair. And ignominy and disrespect. But I fucking won because I've got the songs, I've got the voice, I've got the band, I've got the guitar abilities. I'm the most fucking talented, godlike rock star on the planet. And I've got nothing to do but sing my songs for you people till I die. I promise I will do that. And help you all orchestrate the Everybody All at Once process. That's my job as your leader of the world. That's what I am. So I release these motherfucking albums of Swaybone. We play these shows of Swaybone. The goal is to use Swaybone to disseminate not to his peace and save the world. Is that clear? That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm holding firm to. And I'm doing Adi Da's devotional practice, and it's intensifying. And then, by God's grace, Bunny Buns and I get to go to Naitumba, or Adi Da Samaraj Ashram, the topmost, ultimate place of Adi Da, his ultimate sacred space. We went to his island. And things took shape there for me that enabled me, or cemented things in place, that put me on a projection path towards realization, towards awakening from the ego. And this is like the most important thing about my life, about my achievements, or anyone's life. The most important thing about your life, anyone's life, is realization. Ego transcendence is the point, is the point. Transcends everything else. But being on Naitumba and successfully serving and existing there bonded me to Adi Da physically. His body's there, buried there. And made it possible for me to be in his seat of realization now and forever. Thank you, Bunny Buns. Thank you, Kwanja Sukapur. She let me go there. And thank you, Warner Williams. And there's a whole story about how, because of Warner, I got to be Adi Da's devotee. Without Warner, no Theo devotee. No Theo devotee, no Save You the World. No, it's bad. So there's a chain of causality. It's like, oh, thank you, God, for every one of these blessings in my life that are so extraordinary. Like, I have reached for the extraordinary. I also write more books during this time. So I'm editing materials of Adi Da's and making my commentary on them. And these are books called The Turnabout of Adi Dam, number 1. Upset the Apple Cart, number 2. Reality Kit, number 3. The Firm Manuals, number 4. And number 5 is The Operational Guide for the Global Cooperative Forum, co-written with Mike Waters. Whew! And they're right there. You'll see them. all this service I'm doing, living in cooperative community, I'm still paying my tithe. I'm even a celibate renunciate because my second wife, Bunny Buns, divorces me, and I'm thrust into the conditions of potential realization, and I seize upon them because I've always had this secret, or not so secret desire. I do want to be enlightened. Why that is, I think it's because I'm God. That must be why. Okay, so I'm God, and therefore I wanted to be enlightened. And in 2012, I begin a 15-month process of doing the intensive inquiry. What am I always doing? So I'm asking myself the question, what am I always doing? And I'm doing Nama Japa, invoking Adi Da Samraj, Om Ma Da, Om Shri Da, Om Hrim Da, Da Om, Om Da. Now I say Om Shri Paramasaptana Adi Da Lavananda Hridayam. And then doing the conscious process, which is self-inquiry, what am I always doing, and doing the conductivity process, which is breathing down the frontal line, the God feeling from above, down, and then back up the back on the out breath. So you're doing the circular breathing of bringing God down the frontal line, feeling the knots in your frontal line, letting God work out the knots in your frontal line while surrendering and submitting to God through this active moment-to-moment invocation of God, through his name, through the feeling breath of the divine spirit breath, and through the active inquiry, what am I always doing? So you're poking, prodding, and investigating, examining constantly your own ego contraction. And this is the most difficult, the most terrifying, the most painful, and the most unwanted process anyone ever could go through. And I did it with Adida's complete and total graciousness and effectiveness. I awakened from the ego in April 2013 in this house. And for 7 years, I have not collapsed into the ego. And that's a whole other story. I released the song Not to His Peace on the Swaybone album Life on Earth in 2013. Life on Earth is Swaybone's 5th album. And so by 2013, I've got my songs and my recordings together. I've got my singing together, and not the drums. So there's yet more years of struggle to get the drumming of Swaybone correct. And because of Trevor Cook, we were able to get the drumming correct on a sufficient number of our best songs that we could make a complete album, which was the Swaybone Golden Hits, which is taking the best songs with Trevor's drumming from Life on Earth album and the Dissolver album and putting those together just out of necessity because we couldn't finish recording with Trevor. So we left it at that, but I had the goods finally in 2016. I had the musical goods. I had the songs, the singing, and the drumming, the recording, all the musicianship dialed. And I had the songwriting formula where I could keep cranking out A-list songs in perpetuity. I have a backlog of song material so vast and so immensely good, I'd kick anybody's ass for fucking centuries. Really, there's nobody that can touch me in rock except for maybe Devin Townsend and Matt Bellamy, because they can sing and play. There's very few people who could sing and play at my level, and let alone write the song and be a performer and entertainer and all that. So you motherfuckers, I love you. I'll watch out. Okay. Because I had the goods musically, it was now time to make the Swaybone music videos. You see how my grind is so big? Like, I have to make all the fucking rock posters for Swaybone shows. Make the logos for all the Swaybone merchandise. Be the record label Ego Death for the band. Make the recording studio, on and on. Every fucking thing it has to be done for the band, booking the shows. I have done it. Therefore, make me your leader. No, I'm sorry. Not sorry. So I'm making, in 2013, I have multiple breakthroughs after becoming enlightened. I start the Swigglehorf art, and that art you see behind me, I start being able spontaneously able to do abstract action painting and drawing. And I'm able to do video blogs like this. This is a scripted one, or half scripted, but I could do 90% of my blogs are unscripted, and they're genius to a T. Like, I listen back, they're entertaining, nothing needs editing or changing. You could transcribe them to books and they would be perfect. That's the God-given gift, one of these siddhis, these God inspirational faculties that emerged in my life because of God, but because of my fidelity to God. All this resume here that I'm telling you is me serving God and giving to God, giving to the people, and of course to myself, because I have more fun, I have more pleasure, I have more ecstasy than all y'all, except for Lisa Cairns and a very few. And always under Santosha and Adida. I'm always subordinate to them. I know my place. So the music thing creatively is all coming together. Everything I could have ever wanted musically, I have achieved creatively. And I'm just going to crank out that goods for Swaybone now and forever. So I'm making unscripted video blogs. I'm doing the Swigglehorf art. And I'm making 20 new music videos for Swaybone. And that's a whole vast artistic project. And difficult to do. Again, you could easily go bankrupt just making one music video for your band. You fuckers. What the fuck do you expect us bands to do? The impossible. You fuckers. Fuck you. I've told you how I felt in my video series called You Sleeping Fans of Rock. So I will deflect my rage to that for now. Okay, so I'm relentlessly grooving forward on this Save the World project, and the biggest breakthrough is yet to come. I go to Santosha Tantra in person in 2018, and I ask her if she would, based on what I'd read to her from the Firm Notes, the Free Union of Renunciate Messengers, information by Adida, which is to create this Free Union of Renunciate Messengers, and she agreed that she would do that she would, with Adida, form a collaboration for the purposes of the firm. She would be the firm. And because she's the firm, with Adida, there's that divine sacred authority in place in the universe, in this world, to be a governing authority over the Global Cooperative Forum and keep it straight. Keep it from being merely worldly, merely egoic. And therefore, through my doings and my help, there is now in this world fully established a divine sacred authority of God and Goddess, Adida Santosha Ma, within the Free Union of Renunciate Messengers. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Holy cow, I did that. And then I've been working with Mike Waters to develop plans for the regenerative bionomies that he has created, the swarm intelligence that he's developing, the living STEM education that he's developing, the e-co-ops, the monolithic domes, the earth ships. I have been graced to work with Mike Waters, the world's greatest social engineering genius. I published my papers on the germ, so I created my ideas for the Global Union of Rock Musicians. I create my idea for Real Rock, which is to create 25 local band showcases in Central California. And I create my plan for rock and roll block parties, which is to create all ages rock events through blocking off the street to cars and having neighborhood block parties. As a form of Sacred Commons, as a form of supporting the idea of Bright Oakland. I also wrote or did my video for Bright Oakland. So I'm generating ideas for city planning. I became aware of WikiLeaks in 2016 16, and Pizzagate and the cabal, and Bernie Sanders endorses Hillary, and I lose my shit. I break away from the left and the Democratic Party forever. I'm no longer in any way associated with that. And begin the process of integrating my work to save the world with the fact that I'm realizing that there is the plan, there's the QAnon plan in place to save the world. And they say, trust the plan in the Q movement. And I'm like, that's what I've been working on. That's what I do. That's what I've been doing. I've predicted this. I've been doing this in a sort of behind the scenes way by sheer force of intention and art. I have been doing it because I couldn't do it in the field of power or as fame. I wasn't famous and I wasn't powerful. I wasn't rich. Didn't have those opportunities. So I had to do it within the area that I have power, which is art and intention. And organizing people on closing deals. Being a leader. So I'm just having the greatest fucking intellectual renaissance anyone's ever had. I mean, other than Adida and Santosha Ma. I mean, I am getting to enjoy seeing how all of the pieces fit together, and literally to be an author of some of those pieces, and to see Adida be the author and Santosha Ma be the author with her One True Tribe and Unified Field of Love writings. I get to see the grandest vision of how it all works. Because even the highest visionaries on YouTube, and everyone speaking from QAnon to channeled information to, no one still talks about Adida. I'm still the only one trying to talk about Adida in public life, in rock and roll, or in any significant way within art. I think there's other artists using Adida, but they are so far from making a serious go of it. Except for maybe EO. Free Jones. I really think she's a great painter, and I love her work, and I really support that. And Nam Leela's music is great. Nam Leela Free Jones. So, yeah, I support that. There is wonderful signs on the horizon of people beginning to recognize Adida, but it hasn't happened in the conspiratorial movements. It hasn't happened in the QAnon. It hasn't happened in the Great Awakening, Nisara, Jisara, patriotic, truther stuff that's going on. That hasn't been integrated yet with Adida. But I have. I can see it. I can see how it all works together. I released a Swayboom box set of 170 songs and jams in 2019. I teach 1,000 kids rock and roll guitar from 2001 to the present. I developed the pomegranate model of a new global religious system with Adida and Santosha Ma at the top, and all the true spiritual masters as the seeds inside the pomegranate. Do you get that? All the true spiritual masters, including Master Jesus, are the seeds in the pomegranate. But Adida and Santosha Ma are at the top of that little sprout flowerette thing at the top. So you can hold the pomegranate in your hand. It's the size of a human heart. You could break it open and enjoy all the seeds, which is all the true spiritual masters belong to you. They're your teacher. They're your inheritance of human race, of you individually. And you always know who's at the top. The second coming of God is Adida Samraj. And the first divine incarnation of the goddess in the seventh stage is Santosha Tantra. And the two of them together are incontrovertibly the divine resolution of the feminine and masculine. So I've developed a pomegranate model for a new global religious system. And a way to reconcile Christianity and the Abrahamic religions with paganism, called transcendental polytheism. And what I would recommend is that people adopt transcendental polytheism and the pomegranate. 38. I have these numbered. The Ego Death Foundation is I have formed to continue the work of saving rock and roll and fine art and promulgating the global cooperative forum and doing all this work in my resume here now and into perpetuity. So I'm trying to wrap this up. We're already past an hour. One of the biggest obstacles to saving the world is disunity in America, right? If we can't solve the disunity in America problem, we're doomed. America's too powerful. It cannot be divided against itself. The world is depending on America to lead. The left-right divide, the anti-Trumpism by the brainwashed left has to be dealt with. It has to be resolved. It has to be. But Trump himself cannot be the figure that resolves this divide and conquer problem. But possible unifiers are on the horizon, possibly Kanye West, possibly JFK Jr. There's a possible unifier in the British Commonwealth, King John III, Joseph Gregory Hallett, possibly. And the unification of Russia, now through the reemergence of the Russian Orthodox faith, and even the revival of the cult of the Romanovs. Look into that. Russia's got a great future. Russia's got all that it needs. Yeah. Unification in Israel is supported by the movement of the Messianic pro-Yeshua Jews. Have you heard about this? There is a great movement afoot of Jews recognizing Jesus. Praise God. Praise God. Read Jeremiah 53. Is that it? Or Isaiah 53? Fuck it. Full disclosure about the children will be a goad to world unity. So the world's going to unify when the sufficient recognition of what happened to these children is going to destroy the mind of the world. It's the fulfillment of positive world unity will be through the recognition by the people of the world of Adida and Santosh Ma. So there is going to be a great recognition worldwide of Adida and Santosh Ma. So help me God. The great cultural force that will help to maintain global unity and project Gaia's cultural influence to the universe is rock and roll. Once again, rock and roll is my method. It's my everything that I'm giving to you. Therefore, my plan to support unity and saving the world involving saving rock and roll via real rock, local band showcases, rock and roll block parties, and I support the broader dissemination of Adida, Santosh Ma, the global cooperative forum, and Natu's peace in the world through that means. I also help save the world merely by being or existing as the samadhi of the bright, or being a source of egoless radiance to everybody. And that's my resume for how I have attempted to save the world.